Today we're at the Bay Street Passive House. We're talking sheetrock texture. Want to know more? Let's take it away. Sheetrock is actually one of the most important parts of the house. It's also one of the most exciting times of a house. So we go from a framed in box that has lots of electrical and plumbing and HVAC in the walls to something that actually starts looking like a home. And it's an exciting time for us because it means that we've done all the rough all trades and now we can actually get to the finishes. It's also an exciting time for the clients because it's the first time they actually get to see what their house is going to look like, at least in a big white box kind of way. So one of the things that we need to focus on is how we finish off this drywall. So most drywall in most houses is 1/2 inch drywall. The difference between 1/2 inch and 5/8 inch, and 5/8 inch is like twice as strong and flatter than 1/2 inch, and yet costs a tiny little bit more, and it's just for the material and is the same installation cost. We never use 1/2 inch drywall unless we are trying to match existing 1/2 inch drywall in a house. So every one of our projects gets 5/8. Additionally, we buy from a local manufacturer called that's going to supply us that drywall, and then they're actually going to take that drywall back and grind it up, all the cutoffs, and grind it up and use it for new drywall. So we're recycling right at the source of production. So it's hyper efficient. Most drywall that you recycle goes into a landfill where it gets ground up and uses things like soil amendment. So it actually gets added to the soil to add more moisture carrying capacity to that soil. So we're going to be using 5/8 drywall. Now the texture comes into play. Now most of our modern projects are using what's called a level 5. And a level 5 means that that wall is completely smooth. So this project behind us, the Bay Street house, is actually a level 5. So we're in the kitchen, so you see a lot of outlets and low voltage lines coming in for under cabinet lights. But this wall is completely smooth. It's also all covered in sheetrock compound called joint compound. And that means that the guys that are doing this installation use those trowels to put mud as sheetrock compound, to put them over all the wall, and then they'll come back in and they'll sand it. Now the difference between level 4 and level 5, they're both smooth walls, so basically you can't feel any texture. The difference between level 4 and level 5 is that level 4, they only smooth out the wall around the joints, but they don't actually cover the entire wall with mud. And so you will see when the sheetrock is backlit, you will see slight humps in the sheetrock, and you'll see a little bit of shadowing where the thickness at the joints is a little bit thicker than the depth at the places between the joints. With level 5, they actually go through the entire wall and they smooth out the entire wall with new compound, and then they sand it, and then they'll follow around with lights, and they'll look for shadowing from lights from all different directions. It is a lot more work. It is slightly more money, about 15 to 20% more than a level 4, but it is incredibly beautiful. And wherever you have lights in the house, you won't have a shadowing on your walls. Most of the time, people want a level 5, but they want to pay for a level 4. We don't do level 4s because nobody wants to see shadows in their walls. So level 5, or we'll do a texture. Now, why is there textures? Well, textures are a lot less work than a level 4 or a level 5. And really the reason that walls have textures, especially textures in like prefabricated houses or companies that produce like thousands of houses in neighborhoods and stuff like that, those production builders, the texture are fast and easy to install. A lot of times they just spray it out of a hose or what's called a hopper, and then they'll either leave it like that, which is called spray texture, or they'll come back and they'll just hit it with a trowel, which are those big metal flat blades, to knock it down. That's called spray knockdown. And they do that because the texture hides the defects of the walls. And so when you have smooth wall, there's no place to hide. And it has to be perfect. The walls have to be perfect. In spray knockdown, you could have gouges or humps or lumps or divots in the walls, and the spray texture breaks up the homogeneity of the wall, the smoothness of the wall with that texture, and makes it so it's really easy to do really crappy work, honestly. Between the spray knockdown and the smooth wall are what we call in California an old world. And what that is it's a wall largely covered by compound, but they leave little voids in the walls. We call those voids kind of a slim texture. They're maybe a 32nd of an inch. Sometimes they're the size of a nickel or a quarter, and sometimes they're, the size of half of a dollar bill. And they're irregular. So that irregularity also helps break up any defects in the walls. It takes a lot less work because now they're not going through and smoothing everything out, and they're certainly not going around with lights. So it's a different level of texture depending on your budget, depending on how good the construction is, and depending on the style of house. Most modern style houses have smooth walls. Most old houses with lots of trim, they're gonna have an old world, or apartments and then production houses are gonna have a spray knockdown or a spray texture. It's just a matter of how much people wanna spend to make their house look perfect. If you were to put a spray knockdown or a spray texture in a modern house, it would look totally wrong because it's not the style. So if you're interested in learning more about building science, about ways to save money or spend money in construction, hit subscribe as we show you how to build a better way.